What's 3a? The
Accusative.
case. Objective 1. To give 3 rules for how to turn imperatives into other verb forms. Objective 2a. To get familiar with the accusative endings. Objective 2b. To identify 2 functions of the accusative. Objective 3a. To learn the cases of the irregular accusative pronouns may, te, and say. Objective 3b. To distinguish between may, te, say as accusative and may, te, say as ablative. Objective 3c. To distinguish mei as a personal pronoun and mei as a possessive adjective. You do not need to take notes on this. You will know that you can do this if you can complete the exercises at the end, and this information will appear all throughout the stories, both written and read, that you read throughout the year. Objective 1. To give 3 rules for how to turn imperatives into other verb forms.
Okay, 3 rules to turn imperatives into other verb forms. All right, here you see a chart of all the verb forms that we know so far. And in the left 2 columns, there's what is called the imperative. That is the command form. Do it. Now in the far left column, we have the singular one, which is a command to just one person. And in the right, we have the plural command form, which is a command to 2 or more. So I've slipped in y'all here so that you'll know that this one's plural, but you don't need y'all. Okay, so in any case, the singular one is the very simplest form of the verb. To this form, we're going to add other stuff so that it becomes long. In a second, we're going to see that this is basically the stem of the verb that we're going to add on several endings to. So what endings are we going to add on? Well, obviously, as you see right here, to make plural, we're going to add te. Now, this was the imperative mood. Over here, it's technically called the indicative mood, but it's just the normal verb is all it is. So to make the singular one, we're going to just add t, and to make the plural, we're going to add nt. All right, so that was the basic rule, but there are exceptions. And so I'm going to give you a full treatment on this right now so that those of you who want to really learn it rightly can do so. All right, so here you see the 5 conjugations. And what are conjugations? They're just like declensions. They're ways that you enumerate all the possible endings that a verb could have. Nouns have what are called declensions. So nouns decline. Verbs have conjugations. So verbs conjugate, which is more like horizontally written on the page, whereas declensions is more going down, declining on the page. All right, so there are 5 on here on the left, you see. The standard names are first conjugation, second conjugation, third conjugation, fourth conjugation, and then this subset of third conjugation, which is called third IO conjugation. Now, that's all nice and good, but what I want you to remember is not that. I want you to remember different names for these, because these will be much more helpful to you. First conjugation is long A verbs. Second conjugation is long E verbs. Third conjugation is nothing verbs. Third IO is short I verbs. And fourth conjugation is long I verbs. Now, why is that? Well, because that is the vowel that the stem ends in. So here you see in yellow the stem of each of these conjugations. Again, don't worry that there's a separate rule. Up here we're using second principal part minus RE. Down here we're using first principal part minus O. That's not important, and you can't even think about that when you're dealing with words in real life. What you need to think about to deal with words in real life is to be able to recognize, is this a long A verb, or a long E verb, or a long I verb? Now, you don't see a long I here. It's actually over there in the second principal part. So sometimes the long mark is lost. But yeah, this is a long I verb. And then the middle 2 here, the third declension ones, are nothing verbs because the stem ends in no vowel, and short I verbs. So that's what I want you to remember. Long A, long E, nothing, short I, and long I. Because that will tell you how much of the word you should include in the stem before you rip off one ending and stick on a different one. So always include everything up to and including that identifying vowel. All right, so Why did I bring this up? Because the imperative, the command form, is pretty much identical to this stem. Take a look. Woka is the stem. The imperative is woka. You just add on an exclamation point. Then the plural would be with a te. Then habe is the stem. Habe is also the imperative. Just add on an exclamation point. Audi is the stem. Just add on an exclamation point. Of course, in all of these, we add on te. Then when we add on an exclamation point like this, now it would work here, but there's a slight problem, and that is that you cannot really say this. Cod. It just doesn't work. It's not a Latinate sound. Romans always like to have a dramatic vowel sound ending their verbs, not a closed off d sound. So the way the Romans would do this is when they tried to say cod, they would subconsciously let an E slip in. And same down here, capi. You can't really say a word ending in short I. It just doesn't work. Naturally, with time, that short I will evolve into an E. So both of these have their imperative be eh. So don't even worry about what the stem is for this. The stem will confuse you. Instead, just add on eh as the final vowel. And then the plurals would be ite, like that. So basically, stem equals singular imperative. All right, now, having known the stem then, now we can more properly create the present tense with its endings, t and nt. T for singular, he, she, or it, and nt for plural, they. Well, you just add it on. Wokat and wokant. Habet and habent. Now, don't pay attention to the first two lines in these. We won't get that till stage 15. But so it goes wokat and wokant. Wokat, he, she, it calls. Wokant, they call. Habet, he, she, it calls. And habent, they call. Notice that the macron also is lost here. These macrons, though they're distinctive of the conjugation, yet they don't appear in these forms that we learn. In fact, they won't appear until stage 15 when we get the two lines above it. Down in the fourth again, audit, audint is what it would be. Now, there's something here. We'll deal with that in a second. And then in here, it would be kad and kadunt, and kapit and kapint. That's what it would be, but you see some blue things, blue exceptions slipping in. So let's cover these exceptions now. Why does this occur? Well, because there are two sounds that the Romans hate. You can forget the one on the left here because that comes in stage 15, but the one on the right here is what we want to deal with. The Romans hate int. It sounds flimsy and weak. I is a flimsy sound and nt is a strong grunting sound, and it doesn't sound good for those two to be together. So a grunting U will slip in. You'll almost never hear int. It always becomes eunt. And that sounds nicer, doesn't it? So that's one of the reasons for the exceptions. Anywhere you see int, it will instead become eunt. And then the other exception is that Romans hate crushed syllables. Look at this. This is what it should be by the rules. Kado, kads, kad, kadmus, kadtis, kadunt. That sounds so German. You're swallowing and spitting, and that's not the rat-a-tat-a-tat-a Latinate Romance language style. So what's going to happen here on this one is that the smallest, most unassuming vowel will slip in. Now that is normally I, but before the grunting nt, the smallest unassuming vowel will be u. Of course, it could be iunt, but in that case, the I came actually from the stem. So I included I here, but really it's just U. U is the most unassuming vowel. All right, so let's go back and apply these rules now and see what happens. So cod, it would be crushed. Instead, it becomes cadit. Cadunt would be crushed. Instead, it becomes cadunt. Capit is the way it is. No change there. Capint sounds flimsy, so a grunting U will slip in. Audit is the way it is. Audint would sound flimsy, so a grunting U will slip in. So that's why we have these exceptions coming in the last three conjugations, because the Romans just hate that int and crushed syllable sound. All right, so let's review one more time then these exception-ridden third conjugations, nothing verbs and short I verbs. Okay, so don't even worry about what the stem is, I guess, right now. Just remember that it's going to get and ite, and then in the verbs, it's going to be it and und or iunt. It, cadit, capit, and then und or iunt. Mr. Redmond, how do I know whether I should write und or iunt? You had to ask, didn't you? Well, sadly, the truth is, you can't know. You can't know until stage 15. In stage 15, we will get this first line, cado and capio, and you will see that written in the glossary. And so when you see it written in the glossary, you will know, oh, this one is a nothing verb, and this one is a short I or maybe long I. But you don't see that till stage 15. Normally, the way you would tell two conjugations apart is to look at the second principal part. But these two, of course, are both ERE. There's no difference between their second principal part endings. So that won't work. So second thing you could look at is, as I said, the first principal part, cado or capio, but you don't even see that in the glossary because we write our words with its until stage 15. So you won't know. You might get some of these wrong. You might write cadiunt when it's really cadunt. And you might write capunt when it's really capiunt. So there's no way that you can guess this in advance. Just if unt doesn't work, try iunt. And if iunt doesn't work, try unt. I'm sorry, that's the way it goes. Life is tough. So in any case, though, you now know how to create the present stem by remembering long A, long E, nothing, short I, and long I. You know how to create the imperative by it is the present stem in 3 out of the 4, and other than that it's or ite. And lastly, you now know how to create the present forms of any regular verb. You add on t or nt up here, and you add on it and unt or iunt down there. So good luck, and just start doing it, and little by little with time, you'll correct any mistakes that you make.
So that's basically all you have to worry about. You have to add on a te or a t or an unt. Okay, I want you to try some exercises now. What you're going to do here is I'm going to give you the imperative singular, and I want you to give me the plural imperative, the singular, and the plural. Now, when you do this, you're going to have to watch out for a short E, because that, remember, is ambiguous. You don't know over here in the plural whether that's going to be an unt or an iunt, because if it were unt, then it would be a nothing verb, and if it were iunt, it would be a short I verb. So you have no way of knowing whether that's third or third IO. So watch out for that, but everything else you should be able to do quite easily following the book. So stop the video and do this set right now, and then start it again when you're ready to see the answers. Okay, and here are the answers. You can see that we had 4 of those short E's. Now don't confuse them with a long E like right there, because that's a long E verb. That's not a third conjugation verb. Okay. So of our short E's, 4 were nothing verbs, and only 1 was a short I verb. Also notice that I said that any stem ending in P and C usually becomes a short I verb, and that one does, but this one breaks the rule, so it doesn't always work. Sorry. All right, try this next set of exercises. This time you're going to do the reverse. Okay, try this next set of exercises, and this time what you're going to have to watch out for is an iunt. Why? Because if you look back at your chart, over here in the imperatives column, that could go ite, like you see right here, if it's a short I verb, or it could go ite if it's a long I verb, and you can't tell just from looking at that.
So you're just going to have to guess and hope you get it right. Good luck. All right, in stage 15, we'll learn the better rule to figure this out. So stop the video and try these, and then turn it on again when you're ready to see the answers. Okay, here are the answers. It looks like we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these ambiguous ones, and it looks like 1, 2 of them were long I verbs, and the rest were short I verbs. Short I, and short I. This one right here should have been, you can probably guess, fake, but it was actually fak, because there are 4 little verbs, diek, doek, fak, and fair, which have an irregular singular. Alrighty.
Objective 2A, to get familiar with the accusative endings. All right, well, going to our grammar charts. Set the slider to 3 to reveal the areas in charts 1 and 2, and also several areas in the pronouns in charts 11A, B, and D, and then also 2 lines down in chart 15B. You could also set the slider to 4 to reveal the imperatives in chart 13. That's up to you. So I'm going to concern myself mainly with the chart number 2, however, and blow it up big so that it looks like this. And you'll see here that in this chapter, our new ending is anything ending in M. M is the sign of the accusative case. Now, we might ask ourselves, oh, well, what does the accusative case do? Well, it receives the verb's action. For example, I punch the window. The window is receiving my action of punching. We often say that that accusative performs the function of a direct object. And this term object is in the sense of my goal, the terminus, the end point of my action. The accusative case word is the thing that gets changed or affected. It is the done to, or the patient, or the recipient of the action. So that satisfied one of our 2 functions of the accusative. One of the functions of the accusative is to function as the direct object, which is to receive the verb's action. A second function of the accusative that we're going to have is just called this curious phrase, place to which. And that's going to be any time that you have the word odd in front of an accusative word. Odd means to. So ad Romam would be to or toward Rome, for example. Or ad me would be to or toward me. Any of those would work. So anytime you have an accusative, you can slip odd in front of it, and that tells where something is going to, and that function is called accusative of place to which. So you've got 2 functions of the accusative. All right, so why don't you go down there and identify what function is happening now in exercises 2B right here. I'll let you work on it a second, and then I'll put up the answers. Your choices are direct object or place to which. All right, here are the answers. These words in red were the accusative words, and those were the functions on the right. All right, so we have accomplished objectives 1, 2A, and 2B. Now we're going to concern ourselves with several irregular accusative forms called personal pronouns. And they are in the top of your picture here in chart number 1. There are these pronouns up here. And you can see that these are only singular. They're not plural. There are no plurals of these. Well, actually, the plurals are right there, but we don't uncover them until stages 5 and 7. And they're also right here. So why don't I just go through these? Mei, of me. Tui, of you. Sui, of oneself, of himself, herself, their selves, of oneself. Me, me as the recipient of the action. Te, you as the recipient of the action. In ancient English, this is our Old English word, thee. You would never say, thee go to the store. No, they would say, the shoppers come to thee. But it would be, thou go to the store if it was as the subject or doer or nominative. Thou is up here, which we haven't uncovered. But down here, it was thee, which came from Latin te. And then over here on the right, say, oneself, himself, herself, their selves. Any of those are good translations for that. And strangely, you'll notice that the ablative form has the exact same appearance,
although the sound is different. So like may in the
prepositional phrase in me, in you, in oneself. And if you remember, we had the preposition that takes an accusative, odd. So here you have examples of two prepositions, one of which takes an accusative, and the other of which takes an ablative. So if you forgot which ones take which, well, the sid space prepositions take an ablative. Anything else, like odd, will take an accusative. So the only sid space we know so far is the I, which stands for in. That was in your previous video. Okay, so hopefully you understand what these new irregular forms mean. So watch out for mete and se. They don't end in M, but they are still accusatives. Everything else ends in M, of course, but not mete and se. Therefore, it's a little bit of trouble to
visually distinguish between mete and se as accusative and mete and se as ablatives, but audially it's quite easy.
Or mete and se as the recipient of the action and
mete and se as
the side thought. So let's go down here and why don't you try section 3b and see if you can do these. Write accusative or ablative, and I'll put up the answers in a second. And there's the answers. And last off, one of our irregular forms, mei, tui, sui, these up in here, happen to have the exact same form as a word you already learned, which was the form of meus, meus aum. So if you remember, it went meus, mea, meum, and then when we got down here into the genitive, it became mei and mei. And that's a little ambiguous, because here we've got a mei, meaning of my something, and since it was a possessive adjective, it was always attached to some noun right after it. So of my boy, of my thing. Whereas up here you've got an identical form, you know, mei and mei, but up here it means of me. So, of me, of my. Of you, of your. So, tui, of your, tui, of you. And the same thing on sui, of oneself versus of his.
Or of hers, or of one's, or plural of theirs, of their thing.
So, this is an ambiguity. So, the key to distinguishing these is that a possessive adjective will always have a noun right after it. So look for something matching it. Whereas a personal pronoun, like on the top up here, will just stand by itself. Usually like son of you or master of me. Okay? Oh, I forgot to mention something.
Well, look at this. Mei, tui, and sui can be genitive singular of your object, of my object, of one's object, or they can be nominative plural. Your objects, my objects, one's objects. So that's another ambiguity there.
Sui is up there, but it could also be sui down here. So we've got nominative plural and genitive singular, both as possibilities. So let's try those. Section 3c. Remember, the possessive adjectives have some word following them.
But personal pronouns don't.
So why don't you write pers p or posa? Why don't you give it a try? I'll put up the answers. Julia says, the mother of me is Amelia. Of me is standing alone. So it's a personal pronoun. Amelia says, the servants of my Julius are many.
Servi, mei, Julii, sunt molti.
And it doesn't modify servi, it modifies Julii. But it's still a possessive adjective. Its adjective is describing the noun Julius. Who's Julius?
My Julius.
Next one, Marcus and Quintus say, is Amelia the wife of you, father? Of you stands alone. It does not modify any other noun, so it's a personal pronoun. Pronouns stand alone. Adjectives don't. Number 4, a Roman man is master of himself. Personal pronoun, stands alone. Amelia, my daughter, Julia, is the little sister of son big my Marcus, or of my big son Marcus. My here modifies son Marcus. So does Magni. Magni also modifies son Marcus. And number 6, Julia says, yes, your sons are big. Magni sunt. Your modifies filii. We could put a dash between them. So there we go. All right, so hopefully you've accomplished the objectives. Let's go back and look at those and see if we did them. To give 3 rules for how imperatives make other verb forms. Well, you add te or t or nt, potentially unt. Those are your choices. Te makes a plural command, t makes a singular description, unt makes a plural description. Objective 2a, to get familiar with the accusative endings. Well, they all end in m. Isn't that nice and easy? Or Notice also the neuters have identical forms in their nominative and accusative. So and This is going to be a theme throughout the whole Latin course. With neuters, of whatever kind they are, you can never tell the difference between a nominative and an accusative. The signs are identical. So you never really know if it's the doer or the done to, but you can usually figure it out from context. So anyways, whether or not it's neuter, all these accusatives end in M. Objective 2b, to identify the 2 functions of the accusative. Do you remember what they were? Direct object and place to which. Objective 3a, to learn the cases of the irregular accusative pronouns. Well, hopefully you remember that they were
mei, me, tui, te, and sui, se.
You might want to make a little chant out of that. Your chant will get bigger as the year goes on. Okay, to distinguish me, te, se as accusatives
and me, te, se as ablatives.
Well, if you forgot, as accusatives, they mean the recipient of the action. I put a ... in front of them so that you know that they're at the end of the English sentence, because in English, the recipient of the action is always said last, or as a side thought. So as the end of the action, or as a side thought with in right before them. To distinguish
mei
as a standalone personal pronoun and
mei
as a modifying possessive adjective. Well, this one on the left is translated of me. That one on the right is translated of my. Alrighty, so
that's it. So hopefully now you're an expert on imperatives and accusatives.